Hello, Julie. Welcome back.
Hi. Hi. Hello.
Um, in all of these videos, I always say, welcome back to the people out there. So welcome back to you all too. Um, so we've just talked about our emotional guidance system and the fact that those four emotions, right? Fear, anger, sadness, and happiness really are part of our nervous system. They're part of our bodies. They exist in our bodies. They show up very clearly, right? As our negative body compass, that's kind of that fear and anger experience, or maybe the shutdown of sadness,
Mm,
and the kind of attraction response of happiness and contentment that means go forward, and how those are our primary emotions. And we have what are called secondary emotions, which in IFS language is really these parts of us that control, right? So we can have fear of our anger. We can have fear of our fear. We can have
mm,
shame about our anger, shame about our fear.
mm,
We can have sadness about our anger. We can have um, anger about our sadness, and all of these things, right? So anything that's a feeling about the primary feeling, it's almost can be layered, right?
mm,
Is
mm,
are usually the parts that are trying to keep us from this kind of core primary emotion that is held usually by an exile or even just a naturally valuable part of our system that is
mm,
giving us a valuable message. So what I'd like to do is to kind of go through those four and just talk about what is the valuable message that it's giving.
mhm,
So I've also talked in the teaching about, when we have explosive emotions, namely
mhm,
really intense anger, fear, sadness, it often will point to the TNT underneath, right? The unhealed trauma, unmet
mhm,
needs, or untrue
mhm,
thoughts. So we might
mhm.
talk about some of those, right, that are
Yeah.
being pointed to. So,
Yeah.
so when you experience anger, and I know that you've gone through a huge process of reconnecting
Mhm. Yes.
to your anger goddess.
Yes.
And
Yes.
so, what do you see now as the value of your anger? What does it tell you?
Well, now my anger tells me either about because I get angry about things in the past, which I didn't dare to be angry about then.
Yeah.
And it tells me that was not okay, usually.
Mm. Mhm.
You um, um, were, you have a grievance. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, that was not okay what people expected of you or did to you, whatever.
Mhm.
So I have it's kind of in the past and then in the present. So when I remember something with anger, I think actually that tells me that was not okay and you have a grievance. And it also helps me, it does help me with the whole kind of, because I have this problem with gaslighting, that I was for many, many years, that
Right.
that was a part of my life that I would often think, well, am I crazy? I
Mhm.
must be, because of denial of all kinds of things and what is real,
Mhm.
and did that really happen, all these things.
Mhm.
And now when I look back, it actually has the, when I'm angry, it actually gives it, after I've sat with that anger, it is actually quite helpful in giving me clarity. Now I say that was not all right. There was
Yeah.
nothing wrong with you. So it's kind of has two functions really. There's anger about the past,
Yeah.
and then there's anger about things in the present.
Mhm.
And again, sitting with that, reflecting about, why am I angry about this? And it
Mhm.
is usually, as I become calm and I think about why I felt that anger after I've done something to express it, um, that was something that wasn't okay.
Mhm.
That
Mhm.
was a boundary that somebody was crossing, or
Mhm.
somebody was doing something that you um, that was not okay as far as
Mhm.
you're concerned. So it's a kind of a guidance to what I um, uh, to the boundaries that I can make now.
Mhm.
And when I look back to the past, it's a guidance as to, okay, you know, that was not all right in the past. You were
Yeah.
wronged, and you
Yeah.
weren't mad. You
Mhm.
know, it was that should not have happened. So
Mhm.
that's how it seems to help me
Yeah.
now. But it's taken me a very, very long time to get to that point, because
Mhm.
most of my life I believed that anger was wrong.
Mhm.
And when I was a teenager, I went to church, and I got the message that we must not be angry, and that
Mhm.
anger is a sin, when in
Mhm.
fact it's aggression and violence that
Mhm.
are
Mhm.
destructive and
Mhm.
wrong, rather than these feelings of anger that rise up, which are
Right.
actually your body saying, hold on, that's
Mhm.
not okay. And I look back and think, well, if I'd listened to my anger as a teenager,
Right.
it would have been a huge help to me. It would have been a wonderful guide. But I've made friends with my anger,
Mhm.
and I know that if I sit with it and listen to it, it will tell me important things about infringements of
Right.
boundaries, usually.
Yeah. And you're making such a good point that I think that when anger turns into aggression and violence, it's because it hasn't been listened to. It's
Mm,
been suppressed or overridden either by ourselves
mm,
or other people, for so
mm,
long that it's going to be explosive. Whereas
yeah.
if we have this self-led relationship where our self is listening to the anger, and I know you've talked about this before about the anger kind of, I think of it as like blending with us and maybe being destructive versus the self being able to really listen to the anger. Like you said, what is the infringement here? What is happening? And then being able to have this creative energy to, let's take the information that our anger is giving us and create something different in the world.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, yes, hugely creative. Because when I made the anger goddess, it's very odd that because my therapist had given me this clay, and she
Mm-hmm.
said, here's some clay. I want you to make something that represents your anger.
Mm-hmm.
How am I going to do that? And I said, oh, it actually feels quite nice, this clay. And she said, okay, well, make anger your friend.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that as I started to make it, I gave this clay figure a, a rotund belly, and I said, oh, this is a pregnant figure. And it wasn't really until afterwards I thought, well, anger is pregnant with all
Yeah.
kinds of potential and all kinds of creative potential. Just like when we're
Mm-hmm.
pregnant, we've created
Mm-hmm.
something, and we've created new life, and there is the potential for anger to achieve all kinds of creative things, to make
Mm-hmm.
change, and
Mm-hmm.
to say, no, enough, you've infringed my boundaries for too long, and I need freedom now to be me.
Mm-hmm.
And you can see that not just in individuals, but in whole groups of people, where
Yeah.
anger drives change.
Mm-hmm.
But it's all gets very complicated with whether people should be violent or non-violent in
uh,
activism and so on.
right, right.
But it can have, without anger, without people really feeling angry about what had been done to them,
Mm-hmm.
we wouldn't have all the change that we've had for the
Yeah.
better in the world.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, it's such a mechanism of control and keeping people submissive, or
Yeah.
if we get them to believe that their anger is sinful. I was like you, I until I think I was 40, around 40, 42, before that I thought anger was just always bad. And
Yeah.
now I kind of chuckle at it. I'm like, I was exiling a whole quarter of my emotional guidance system. Did not
Mm-hmm.
have access to it. And how I'm just so amazed that I really genuinely believed that this part of being human was unacceptable. So
Mm,
yeah, if people don't have access to that, they're so much more easily controlled. The
mm,
status quo is able to continue.
mm.
Um, so yeah, I think you're right. When we have access to our anger, we make changes, but improving
Improving.
things, right?
And yeah, not just for ourselves, but
Right.
for others as well.
Yeah.
Because yeah, it's
And I don't think we need to, um, personally, I don't think we need to use violence. I think we can be very creative in the way that we make the change, but even that energy of passion and of, because anger has a very confident, courageous, when it's, self-led anger is very confident and courageous and
mm,
powerful. That
mm,
can even seem intimidating to others. They might call it violence because they think it's sinful. They think it's all bad if we're asserting ourselves in any kind of way.
mm,
Um,
mm. Yes, yes. I can remember my mum could not see the difference between being assertive and being violent.
right.
She could not see the difference between it,
Mhm,
between the two, and she didn't. Well, if I was confident with people and made it clear what my needs
mhm,
were, as
right.
I began to do this as I got older, when I was an adult, and she'd see
Mhm.
me doing this, and she'd say, "Oh, I never thought you'd stick up for yourself like that." I never, and
Like
that's
that's
right.
a
And she,
bad thing. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
and she seemed to think that I was being horrible to people. Um,
Right.
and violent towards them. So, no, you don't understand. I'm just, in fact, I'm being kinder, really, because I'm making my needs. But she could
Mm,
never understand it. She just thought
yeah,
I
yeah.
was being. Oh, she was always saying, "Oh, well, you've become very bossy." Since
Mhm.
you were a teacher, she used to say, "Well, I was a bossy teacher," and things like this. She just couldn't process
Right.
um, passion and assertiveness, and
Mhm,
having having quite strong um, feelings about what was right, and
mhm.
expressing that, yeah, in a powerful, confident way.
Yeah.
And making that, of course, to my mother, making any kind of boundaries was unkind.
Mm,
Um,
mhm,
yeah, but yeah, yeah. So yeah, yeah. So I anger has become my friend, um,
mhm,
and sitting with anger is a very powerful thing, but
mhm.
it doesn't lead me to be violent or
Yeah.
uh, yes.
Yeah. Yeah. It's such an interesting dynamic to change your perspective uh on anything, but but to go from the parts that genuinely believe this is always bad, always wrong, to really connecting to the value of it and befriending it,
Mm,
right?
mm,
Like we do with many of our parts, to begin to
yeah.
see their good intention and the value they have. And again, to be self-led, to where the part is coming to us and telling us, the self can handle anything. It can handle the angriest part. It is allowed to feel as angry as it wants to feel, and then the self can take that information and go forward in a confident, courageous, creative, connected way
Mm,
with it.
yeah.
um, just real quick with that, I was listening to Deb Dana recently talking about saying no from the
Mm,
different parts of or from the different states of the nervous system,
mm,
and how we can say no from this fight or flight response. We say no, right, in this
mm,
way. Or we can say no from a collapsed response, which is just, aren't even saying anything. We're just
mm,
kind of passive,
mm,
or we can say no from a self-led space, which really is where we're engaging our core, our stomach and our side muscles, and our spine is up straight, but our face is warm, and we say, no, that is not okay with me. right? And it's a different, it's like the angry part has spoken to us, and then the self is like translating in it's like a very calm but a very assertive way, a clear way. This is not okay. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Without being
Yeah.
destructive.
Yeah. Yeah. I was just thinking as you were saying that would make an amazing painting if you could somehow get those emotions in, that it's like the self is holding that
Mhm.
anger and I suppose, yeah, shaping it like shaping the clay in a way into
Mhm.
something warm
Yeah.
and confident. I mean, what does the anger part need? It needs confidence, it needs calm,
Mhm.
and it needs courage to
Yeah.
say no in that
Mhm.
way. I can imagine a painting of someone saying no and their lips saying no, and just getting
Mhm.
the nice sort of warmth into that,
Yeah,
and
they're warm but
solidity,
firm. Yeah.
warm but firm, solid like clay.
Yeah,
Mm,
exactly.
mm,
Yeah, I
mm.
love it. I love it. Do it, Julie.
I'll try. It's very
I
difficult,
mean,
very challenging.
if you want to. Um,
Yeah.
yeah. Um, yeah, okay. Um, so let's go to let's go to fear.
Mm,
What valuable messages we talked a little bit about this before, right? About being able to turn toward anxiety that rises up in us and to say, oh my, what's going on here? Like, what did you just smell or hear? Or, you know,
mm, mm.
um, yeah, what's the valuable message that your fear gives you?
Yeah, I think again, it's like messages either from the past or
Yeah, I was thinking
present.
that. I was like, I love that distinction. It's often telling you something about the past, and then
Yeah,
also can tell you something about the
about the
present.
present.
Mhm.
And you can make this comparison quite, it's like it's like fear can be, I guess it's like a trailhead, isn't it,
Yeah.
in the IFS, that it can you feel, oh, if you sense fear in your body, which I do now, far more. I used to think, oh, I'm just being ill. I can feel these feelings that I usually feel when I'm afraid, oh, I'm just being silly. Whereas now, all right,
Mhm.
there's something wrong with me, like you were saying about in the grocery store, it
Yeah.
can be now very helpful because you can, oh, okay, you can get curious. Oh, that's funny. I'm getting that feeling that I usually
Mhm.
associate with fear, that seems to come with fear. Now, what might have, can I kind of go
Mhm.
backwards and see what that was? There something that happened just now,
Yeah.
like the train noise or the song or the smell or whatever, and am I actually really in a situation where I need to be afraid?
Mhm.
Because fear gives us a helpful message, if there is
Mhm.
something present in the environment now, that I
So
have
we
to be
kind of
careful.
need to update the part that might be
Yeah,
stuck back there.
update that. It's okay. Yeah, right, I get why that makes you afraid.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
that can also, I think, I've found that leads me to parts and exiles and so on. um
Mhm.
but it can also be, well, you can update that part and say, yeah, that, look, there's nothing to be afraid of now, but there might be.
Yeah.
So we do have to, fear is there, goes, because it's part of us being animals, and it's there
Mhm.
to help us to survive and to tell
Right.
us that there is a danger. So first
Yeah.
we have to check out, don't we, that we actually are safe, we're in a safe place, and if we're not, then we've got to do something to make ourselves safe as soon as possible.
Right.
um, and yeah, and I get it with people as well, actually.
Mhm.
I is is this a safe person,
Yeah.
and is
And do you
can
feel
I,
it in your body? Kind of, I know I have the experience of I'll feel it in my body before I
yeah,
cognitively understand why I feel like this person's not safe, but I've learned to
yeah,
trust that kind of
yeah,
instinct.
absolutely,
Something's,
absolutely. Mm, mm.
yeah.
Yeah, because I've got quite strong memories of, before I learned to override my body, there would be people who I felt in my body, I
Right.
don't feel safe with this adult. And it was how I felt when I first met my stepfather.
Yeah.
And so, but I was told that I mustn't be rude and naughty, and that I
Right.
must please this person.
Mm-hmm.
And so I kept on, and I can trace that through, meeting people and thinking, I feel quite
Mm-hmm.
uneasy with this person. I've got this feeling in my body. Usually I have a kind of an feeling of unease in my chest.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And kind of, yeah, and sort of butterflies in my stomach, or just a feeling of, yeah, I don't like being in the presence of this person, and I'm actually
Mm-hmm.
feeling this in my body. Now I am just cautious.
Mm-hmm.
Now, whereas in the past I would think, oh, don't be so silly.
Right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
Yes, this was one of the big ones that helped me understand that I had connection to my body compass back when I was very young,
Yes.
because I had these feelings, it's like the young child where they say, go kiss your uncle, and it's like, no, 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 right? And the child starts crying, and of course the parents and family or whatever, oh, don't be so silly,
Yeah.
he's fine, and kind of push against that inner aversion response is what it
Yeah,
is. And for
absolutely.
whatever reason, I felt unsafe. And what's so interesting is the couple uncles that I felt that with, I still feel that to this day. And I have more of a understanding of why. Back then, I didn't have even a cognitive understanding. My body just told me, no, we don't want to be around this person. And yes, like you, I used to feel guilty. I used to, if I got a sense of someone, I would override it because I thought I must be a bad person. I must be, there's no real good cognitive reason. But I've really learned to trust that. And like you said, just be cautious and not force myself to engage or override that.
No, no,
Um,
that's right. Yeah.
and
And
it's been right
yeah,
every time.
yeah,
So,
yeah, absolutely. And I can look back and many, many times when I felt that feeling, and I was absolutely right.
yeah.
But
Or even
I,
in, sorry, I was just gonna say,
sorry,
or
no,
even an environment, I'll get a certain sense of, when we were looking for houses, to buy,
yeah,
there was just a real bodily sense of safety versus, I don't know, I can't pinpoint what it is, but my body doesn't feel good here. So it's
yeah,
interesting.
yeah. I actually did something. Such a contrast with how I used to be. Recently, it was my birthday, and we were going to a
Oh
new
yeah.
restaurant, and we had to walk through a housing estate to get to the restaurant.
Mm,
And I felt very uneasy walking through this housing estate.
mm,
And I knew that we'd gone there just to look at the route to get there. And when
mm,
we got home, I said to my husband, now in the past, I would have never said anything about it. I would have just
mm,
thought, oh, you're being silly. I thought,
mm,
no, I'm going to listen to my body now. And I
mm,
said to my husband, is there another route to that restaurant that doesn't have to go through that housing estate? And
mm,
he said, oh, yeah, it's about 5 minutes longer. I said, does that really matter? And he said, no. I said, it's just, there's something about that place that makes me feel uneasy, and I won't feel comfortable on my birthday walking through that housing estate. So I'd rather go the other route, which was along a road, which was the main road.
mhm,
It's not, the housing estate was a little bit, off the road. And I said,
mhm,
it feels like somebody else's territory.
mhm,
Um,
mm,
and it's
mm,
it's not very public. And
mhm.
but I just would feel happier in my body if I walk the other way around. And I know I'll feel more comfortable. So I'm not going to analyze it too much, but I'm going to go with what my body feels comfortable doing and
Yeah.
safe doing. And the thing is that when you do explain this to people, well, they're understanding people, I suppose,
Yeah.
they get it. And he said, I absolutely fine.
Yeah.
I wouldn't want you to do anything you don't feel comfortable with. And you
Yeah.
may well be right.
And those are, to me, those are safe people, right? Those are people that are supportive of your body compass. And those are the people you want to be around. You
Yeah,
know,
yeah.
people, and I get it when people shame you, when people shame us for, our anger, our fear response and expressing it, it's because they're suppressing it in themselves, right? They would
Mhm.
never allow themselves to kind of speak their truth and their authenticity that way. So finding people who embrace your authentic inner wisdom, I think is so valuable.
Mm,
So I know
mm.
your husband and my husband are both very supportive in that way. So we're fortunate there. Um,
Mm.
yeah. So let's go to sadness. What is for you the value of sadness?
Yes, the value of sadness. Well, sadness, usually I think sadness takes me to a place of loss.
Mm-hmm.
And it's, I think, taking me to a part or parts that need comfort.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I think that the value of it is that we do need to feel compassion. We do need to be comforted when we've lost something or
Right.
someone or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
or lost something precious.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. And the value of the feeling of sadness is saying you need to take, to me, if you need to take some time
Yeah.
out to be still and to be quiet and to just offer yourself comfort, to kind of
Yeah.
have a little bit of healing time.
Right. Right.
That's what I think the value of sadness is for me, and just sitting with sadness. And if I allow myself to do that, I feel so much better than I
Mm.
used to, when I used to suppress my
Right.
feelings of
Right.
sadness, which were usually about all kinds of things, usually about
Mm.
loss of some kind,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
or yeah, rejection or whatever, or
Mm-hmm.
disappointment. Okay, well, that's all right to be sad,
Yeah.
and offer yourself comfort for that sadness. And there's a wound, and
Mm-hmm.
we can heal it with just, sitting with it,
Mm-hmm.
and showing it compassion, showing yourself compassion. I think that's what
Yeah.
the value of
Yeah.
sadness.
Yeah. That's, you almost said word for word what I'm teaching in this course, which is that sadness usually reveals some kind of loss. And it really is emotional pain, I think. And
Mm,
that
mm,
needs, usually the unmet need is for space, rest, to
mm,
process the loss,
mm,
and for
mm,
comfort.
mm,
And to, yeah, like you said, just to be seen and held and loved, and it reminds me very much of a like a physical wound, right? That needs
mm,
very tender, it's letting you know, like, don't touch me harshly, give me
mm,
some space,
mm,
treat me tenderly so that I can heal, like you
mm,
said. And it's really an indication that we need this space and this tenderness to heal. And then another interesting thing is that when we cry, our when we cry from emotional pain, not from onions or something like that, the composition of our tears is actually different than if it was with onions. That's just like salt water, I guess, that comes out. But when we
oh,
cry from emotional pain, it's actually releasing stress hormones.
oh, wow.
So it literally is a release of this stress that has built up in our body. It's like a release valve, that, oh, and I don't know if you've experienced this. I think you were saying, if you hold it in for a long time, again, it just takes so much energy and effort, and it really builds up like a pressure cooker. Whereas if we release it, and maybe allow the tears to come, um, there is a sense of relief. It's this wave that comes up and out. And, even I have learned, even again, if I don't have a rational reason, I'll just sit and be still, and I will notice sadness. I don't know why. I just know it's there. And if it's there, just kind of like the fear we talked about, there is a reason. I'm just not cognitively aware of it right now. And I will allow it to come up. And for me, it usually rises up in my chest, my throat, heats my face, and then comes into tears. You can feel that rising up. And I was thinking, even, say I'm talking to my husband or a loved one, and I'm feeling there's an angry part, right? And it's coming up. As soon as internally I acknowledge the angry part, I'm become very aware, usually, of a part that's hurting underneath it, that it's protecting. And even if I'm sitting in front of another person and I can allow that wave to come up a little bit into my face and release, I can then speak more confidently, like we talked about, for the angry part and for the hurt part to the other person, from a more calm place that's not trying to attack them, because, like Marshall Rosenberg says, that's a tragic expression of our unmet need. It's not likely to be met. But just, it's so interesting, just even allowing it to come up. Sometimes the other person notices, sometimes they don't, but I'm just allowing. I feel the sadness in my face. I don't know. It's almost like, I guess I'm acknowledging it. I'm allowing it to be there. And then I have more access to self energy from that point on.
Yeah. Oh, that's so interesting about the tears. I
Yeah.
didn't know that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's incredible. Actually, I was reminded of having a baby. And when there's all this pressure and pain and childbirth, and then I can remember when your waters break,
Yeah.
suddenly there's this, you feel so much better. I did, because the all that pressure's going, and there's all this water flowing,
Yeah.
and the baby is able to be released into the world. And I thought, oh, tears are almost like giving birth.
I love that. There's so much birth in the anger and the sadness.
Yeah. And this is the body, isn't it? This is how
Yeah.
all these, the body is a wonderful work of art, isn't it? Which fits in so beautifully together, and with all these connections and all these similarities. And because you think about one function of the body, and then you can think about another, and how similar they are, and how birth is this building up of pressure, anger is this building up of pressure, and then there is whoosh with the tears and whoosh with the amniotic fluid, and birth, something is new in the world.
And it reminds me of just life, like, the contraction and the expansion, and the contraction and the expansion, and the buildup of pressure and the release, and the buildup and the release. And that's
breathing.
Yeah, exactly. It's all the cycle of life through everything. And could you imagine, like, basically damming up that pressure, right? And like keeping it there. That's where our suffering occurs. They say, what we resist persists, right? You're holding it there. And that's why it explodes. But what if we just allowed it to come up and release, allowed it to come up and I mean, to me, that's the picture of health and wellness is. I feel this. I was before I meet with anybody or I do these kinds of things, I'll sit for about 10 minutes and I'll just see what's alive in me. And it's so effectively helpful because inevitably I'll notice something, some kind of fear or some kind of sadness or maybe some kind of tension, and noticing it and allowing it to come up and out. And I'll usually cry right before, because it's just something that's been pent up. there.
Mm,
And
mm,
because I'm stopping to give it attention, I see it, I allow it to come through, and then I feel so much better afterward.
mm,
Um,
mm.
so even just, I encourage people often to have just a little time each day or little points throughout the day where you're just stopping to notice and allowing it to be there, just, and you'll be amazed because the other parts think, oh, if I give it attention and I allow it to be here, it's going to take over and it's going to be here
Yeah.
forever. But that's not what happens. It
No.
comes up and out and whew.
Yeah. 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 It reminds me of when I learned um, some breathing with
Oh
my
yeah.
therapist, and she said, "Oh, when you breathe in, you have to fill the belly with air and
Mhm.
allow your belly to just sort of swell." And I'd been always told to hold my stomach in,
Right,
by my
right.
mother. She said, "Hold your stomach in," and
Yeah.
I my body never felt right to my mother. I never felt that my body was right. As I began to grow, when I was a little girl, she was happy with my little girl's body, but she said, "Oh,
Mm,
hold your stomach in," and then
mm,
oh, it's really good to breathe in and just allow your
mhm,
belly to expand.
mhm,
And then you can just breathe out, and you can allow the belly button to go back towards your spine,
mhm,
and that nice belly breathing is
mhm.
so different to holding your breath
Yeah,
and
yeah.
being tense.
And it's amazing, even just bringing your attention to your breath every now and then.
Mm,
It's amazing how often I realize I'm holding my breath. Like,
yes, me too.
oh
Yeah,
wow,
yeah, me too, me too.
we're like, oh,
I
there
used
must
to
be
do that.
something going
Yeah,
on here. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And I was a great one for holding my breath when I was
Mhm.
and not being aware that I was doing it. And
Yeah, yeah.
and then I used to just it always come out in a sigh. And my mother used to get very angry with me and shout at me and say,
Oh,
"Don't sigh. Why are you sighing?" So
ah,
yeah,
yeah.
childhood and teenage, very, very difficult around the body. Um,
You're just getting constant messages that it's not okay to be human,
mm,
to just your natural responses. Yeah, it's so interesting. Um, okay, last one.
mhm.
Um, is uh, what is the valuable message of when we feel, because we did talk about how when we feel happy, sometimes we even suppress that, right?
Mm,
It's selfish to feel happy. We feel guilty for
mhm.
feeling happy, for feeling pleasure, right? So what is the valuable message of allowing happiness and pleasure?
Um, what's the message of allowing happiness and pleasure? Yeah, for me, it's. I was just looking up into the sky, and I could see these birds through because I've got a window in front of me, and I could see birds
Mhm.
flying up into the sky. And I thought
Mm,
that's how you feel when you're happy. You feel
mhm, mm.
expansive
Yeah,
and allowing
free.
yourself, yeah, to just be free and to just be and to just go into the sky, as it were.
Mhm,
It's what it is to be alive. It's allowing yourself to experience an aspect of being alive. Allowing
mm.
yourself,
Yeah.
it's hard to put into words.
Mhm.
It's a message that it's good to be alive, that you are alive,
Yeah.
and being alive is um, you matter. You're
Mhm.
important, and
Yeah.
life is it's feeling that energy, um,
Mhm.
and that there's all this energy that you can tap into, and things that you can achieve, or you can just be. You
Yeah.
don't even have to achieve. You can just be, and that is
Right.
okay as well in itself. You could,
Mhm.
yeah, it's like taking flight, I suppose, being happy and
Yeah.
going into
Yeah.
a big expansive sky and just just experiencing the joy of being alive.
Mhm.
Um, and I guess that's very restorative as well, because I think that's very, very healing. it makes your body feel well. I think happiness makes you feel well and
Yeah.
whole, true happiness.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting. What you were just saying, it made me think that in many ways we need to feel safe. It's an indication that we are safe, right? When
Safe,
our
yes.
bodies are able to be open um, and expansive and free and
Yeah,
present.
yeah,
And so we are safe, but then also kind of connecting, if we are safe, right? Sometimes there, like you said, there can be parts that are stuck in the past. When we bring them into the present and we remind them of our safety, and the self advocates for our safety, then we can begin to connect more and more to the joy of being alive, like you're
mm,
saying. And I do think that being alive isn't just happiness and joy, it's all of
no,
these things,
of course, yeah,
together.
yeah,
But it really is, like I said, in polyvagal theory, this ventral state, that it's almost like the self state where the self can be fully in this moment, experiencing, just experiencing, like you said, not, we can be doing, we can just be being. But um, I like what Anita Morjani talked about, who had this near-death experience and came back, and her impression of, when people ask her, well, what is the purpose of life? And she said, the purpose of life is to experience
yeah,
things, is
yeah,
to be in this moment. She said, when she has her toes in the sand at the beach and she's watching the sunset and eating ice cream, she's alive, right? She's in this
mm,
body
mm,
experiencing her senses, the sights, the smells, the tastes, the sounds, the feeling. And that's what, and we have to be safe enough to be present to experience that. But
mm,
I think that when we experience kind of that happy feeling, it means whatever's in front of us is like, that's the direction to go. And I think my body compass was broken at some point, because I believed that if I felt expansive towards something, that I felt joy and I wanted it, I needed to not go in that direction,
mm,
because
mm.
that was selfish.
Yeah,
That
yeah,
was,
yeah, yeah,
if I'm happy and getting pleasure, I need to, it's just so backwards, right? So now,
mm,
I'm teaching my children, really test in your body. If you say, oh, even if it's going to college, or all the
mm,
things that the socialized self tells you need to do, if your body's saying, right, find the things that make you expansive, and run in that direction.
mm,
It's such
mm.
a different thing than we're taught.
Oh,
So
yeah, definitely. And it's interesting when you said about feeling safe. You
yeah,
can't really feel that presence unless you're safe. It reminded me again of playing with my friend.
yeah,
And I felt safe playing with her because I knew that she understood me and
hmm,
I her, and I knew that she wasn't going to make fun of me, or that we played these games together where we
yeah,
we felt safe with each other,
yeah,
and
yeah,
that made it possible for our imaginations and our creativity to kind of soar. And she is a very creative person and gone on to she's a musician, and
hmm,
she writes and so on. And when we were little girls, that was what we both really liked stories and so on. So you
yeah,
felt like, oh, this is a safe place to
yeah,
play because this is a safe person who gets me. and
yeah,
and then I felt expansive. But of course, soon the guilt comes along, well, I
mm,
don't like you playing with that person, and I think
mhm,
you do, you know you're too close. Or I remember my mother used to say you're too
mm,
close to her and so on. But yeah, yes, safety. There has to be safety. That's right. And it's
yeah,
telling, and that happiness telling us we're safe, because we
yeah,
can't really be happy unless we're feeling safe with people or in a safe place.
right,
Which, and as you say, whatever you go towards,
hmm,
naturally. And I think, like you're saying about telling your children, I think also when your children grow up and they're having to make choices about what they're going to do as their job.
Mhm.
I've said to both mine, go towards what, makes you feel safe and happy and what you like spending your time doing. Is
Yeah.
there anything like that that you can do as your job? And in fact, now my daughter's got a job at last where she's really happy. And
Yay.
yeah,
Oh.
she's working for a company that provides organic meals in
Mm.
sustainable
Mhm.
packaging and taken to people on bicycles. It's
That's so
completely
good.
green, and she's a part of the team
Yeah.
providing and she's so happy. She said she loves going to
Yeah.
work.
Yeah. I love that because it's, Martha Beck talks about this, and I'm trying to teach this to my children and to
Yeah.
myself, that if you really do follow your body compass, follow the things that make you feel that safety, expansiveness, freedom,
Mm,
it will take you all the way through life. With the
mm,
people that you decide to go more toward and spend more time with, the activities you spend more time doing, um, it will really direct you. So it's really about helping those parts that have learned to suppress that be able to relax, and bringing the parts that are stuck in the past when it wasn't safe to connect to that into the present, and then being able to follow that. And it really, and a lot of times parts mean an experiment. Let me just try it with what I'm going to eat for lunch,
mm,
or what I'm going to
mm, mm,
wear,
mm,
right?
mm.
But as we begin to trust, oh, this actually works. Like I don't actually become, a murderer and a rapist when I pursue what I love. you know,
Sorry, I shouldn't
that
laugh.
there's that whole idea that, like,
Yeah, yeah,
if you just
yeah,
let people do what they want to do, they're going to
yeah,
become
yeah,
murderers.
yeah,
And
yeah, yeah, yeah. Or they
it's
won't do anything at all. I've
yes.
had people say, "Oh, well, nobody would do anything at all," and somebody's
Uh-huh.
got to do this and so on. But oh, well, that's just silly because
Yeah.
they
And
won't
I
do
tell them,
anything at all.
just try it for a little bit and see if that happens. Because I tell people with intuitive eating, right? If they say, oh, if I'm just allowed to eat whatever I feel in my body wants to eat, I'm going to eat a whole gallon of ice cream and a whole
Yes,
bag
yes,
of chips.
yes.
But I said, just test it out, just see, because that's actually another part that's going to do that. But your body won't do that. I guarantee. But and then yeah, it's just it's it's so interesting, yeah, how people think that they're gonna go crazy. Oh, I was gonna say about not doing anything. I decided to give myself one day a week on Wednesdays where it's completely open and free. There's absolutely no have tos or shoulds whatsoever. I don't have to make dinner. I don't have to wake up at a certain time. I don't have to do anything. And there was a part of me that thought, oh gosh, if you do this, Christine, you're just going to sleep all day and watch TV and do nothing. And that is not what happens, Julie. I wake up on that day just so excited about life. And I
Mm.
go out and I walk in nature, and I, take courses, and I learn and I write and I create. And it's one of my most productive days.
Yes,
So-
all my days are like that now because I'm
Yay.
because I'm retired. So, and I have friends who are retired, and they say, well, but if I was like that, I just say, well, I am so busy. I do
Yeah,
so many things, but they're self-directed things. The things that I
exactly.
have chosen to do and that make me feel expansive.
Yeah.
And I have friends, oh, I couldn't be like that.
Yeah.
I have to have the same rigidity as I had when I was working. I have to, because
Mhm.
otherwise I would do nothing at all. But
Yeah.
I have friends who say to me, I'm not creative. And I say, of course you are. We all are.
Yeah.
We all have this creativity, but they see creativity in a very narrow way, I suppose.
Right.
And yeah, so it's
Yeah.
and creativity is what another thing that makes us feel happy and
Yeah. Yeah.
expansive.
Yeah. I agree.
And we use it if we have this time, we
Mhm.
will use it creatively. I
Yeah, I was
really
going to
believe
say,
that.
Yeah, I was going to say that it feeds, right? Because when we're creative, we feel more expansive, but also when we create an expansive, open space, we tend to fill it with
Yeah,
creativity, I think. And I
yeah,
think like
yeah,
your friend's fear, well, I'm just not going to do anything. I always, encourage people, well, just try it maybe for one day and just see what happens. And if their body does just want to collapse and sleep, maybe that's what they need initially, that
yeah.
they've just been pushing and pushing beyond their body's limits, and so they need a period of rest before they can then fill it with creativity. But like, yeah, it's like just try it, just experiment and see.
Mm,
you know
mm. I really agree with you. Yeah, and I think it's true. I have friends who've spent their whole life pushing their body too hard,
right.
and they feel they
Just
have to
every the whole
carry on.
day is things they have to do.
Mm,
Yeah.
mm, mm. And even setting themselves amazing physical challenges. I've got a
Mhm.
friend who does things like rock climbing, and she actually had vertigo, and she
Mhm.
said, "Oh, I had to take tablets, so I had to take beta blockers because I was
Mhm.
experiencing vertigo." But you know, she's
But got to keep
they are,
going. Yeah.
but I've got to keep going. I've got to keep going,
Yeah.
no matter what my body says, because they are of the mindset that we have to overcome the body.
Right. Right. And it's those, again, those parts probably that are believe that her worth is is built in what she's accomplishing or what she's doing,
Yeah,
right? Those
definitely.
parts that will override our body,
Mm.
um because again they have that desperation, I have to do this at all costs, right?
Yeah, that's right.
So
Yeah,
that makes
yeah,
sense, but it
yeah.
is, yeah, it's like you want so much for your loved ones to have that freedom to be able to listen to their body.
Mm.
um Thank you so much, Julie. This
Thank
has been
you.
such a
Thank you.
wonderful conversation. I really, really enjoyed it. And I think, yeah, I just have such a vision, a hope for people to really be able to see the uh, valuable messages that their emotions and their bodies are giving them. So thank you for this conversation.
Thank you. I've enjoyed